Hi there. Today we return to the subject of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And in the first episode, I started looking at the references, the Christian references, and the Islamic references. And today, I want to continue by bringing on different speakers from the Muslim world that interpret Quran chapter 4, Surah and Nisa, chapter 4, Ayah 157. We want to see the different things that they say about that surah. Because the Nigerian Muslims are living in the dark, they're living in ignorance, and when we ask them, they don't have any reasonable answers to give. So I'm going to bring Muslims and enlightened Muslims from all over the world, from Europe and America, to explain, and even from the Middle East, we're going to get there, to explain this particular ayah, since nobody in Nigeria, no Muslim in Nigeria, is willing to explain to us what Surah 4, ayah 157 actually means. So today, I'll be bringing Dr. Shabir Ally, who happens to be based in Canada, and he holds a TV program, a TV show. He has a very large following on YouTube too. He has a program he calls Let the Quran Speak. So today, he's going to allow the Quran to speak, and I hope that everybody is going to enjoy his explanation on Surah 4, Ayah 157, Ayah 150. I don't think he's going to get to Ayah 158, but let's see how far we can get to in this. So let's begin. Dr. Shabir Ally, you're welcome.
Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. My name is Sophia, I'm your host. The aim of Let the Quran Speak is to help you gain deeper insights into Muslims and Islam, as it is practiced here and in other parts of the world. In this episode, the crucifixion of Jesus. Easter commemorates the crucifixion of Jesus and his resurrection from the dead. But what do Muslims believe happened to Jesus? Was he crucified? Will he return before the end of time? With me to discuss this topic is Dr. Shabir Ally, President of the Islamic Information Center. Dr. Shabir, it seems like Muslims have a very unorthodox understanding of what happened to Jesus.
Well, okay, so he has started. That lady that you saw here, she's going to appear again, is his daughter, is Shabir Ally's daughter, Safia Ali. You're going to see it on the screen. And she's the interviewer. And she said, you heard him, Christians believe that Jesus was crucified. So what's the opinion of Muslims? It seems, according to her, she said, it seems that Muslims all over the world have an orthodox view of the crucifixion. Dr. Shabir Ally is going to begin to explain. So go on, doctor.
At least a very different understanding, somewhat different, we can say. There is an intersection of ideas at certain points, and then a diversion also.
So, mind you, there's a way Dr. Shabir Ally speaks. If you are not used to it, you are not going to get what he says. He's going to say, so that you need to piece things together. So he's saying that there are some areas of intersection between the Muslim beliefs and the Christian beliefs, and there are areas of divergence. So I would want him to continue. The reason I have to be pausing this video is to avoid copyright strike. I can't just play the whole thing. We have to pause at intervals, because this is, we're critiquing it. I can't just play it through. Some people have accused me. I have seen a Muslim who said, why didn't you allow it to play? Well, there's just no way for me to do that. Otherwise, my video could be taken down by YouTube if they bring copyright claims against me.
It hinges on a particular verse in the Quran, right?
Yes. In fact, there are a few verses that...
Okay, so the lady said the Muslim understanding hinges on a particular verse in the Quran. Let's see what Dr. Shabir Ally says.
Touch upon this issue. There's a verse in Surah Al Imran, the 3rd chapter of the Quran, where it says that God said to Jesus, "Inni mutawaffika wa rafi'uka ilay." I'm going to... no, I can't...
Now, notice it's getting interesting. He's quoting Surah Imran, Surah 3, where God, according to them, Allah, says, in Mutawafika, talking to Isa ibn Miriam, is it Mut in Arabic, it is to kill, to cause to die. And you had it there. He could not express it. He could not say it out. He could not say it out. Because the ayah actually says, I will cause you to die. And he's going to struggle. He cannot interpret it.
Venture a translation without some interpretation here, but I'll do so anyhow.
I want him to repeat that.
No, I can't venture a translation without some interpretation here.
Did you hear that? I can't venture a translation without an interpretation, without putting his own understanding. He cannot interpret what the ayah says. I don't want to complicate matters. I would have put the ayah on the screen. The point is, if Muslims think that what I'm saying is not correct, come and challenge me. Come and challenge me. And then we're going to show it. But let's, Dr. Shabir Ally, continue.
But I'll do so anyhow. I'm going to take you and raise you to myself.
Okay.
Now, the verb that I've translated here as take might also mean I'm going to cause you to die.
No, that's what it means. Can you see lying? He said the verse that he translated as take, mutawafika, might also mean to cause you to die. No. What it means is to cause you to die. You are the one changing it. You are the one changing it. So, but let's let him continue.
So there is some ambiguity here.
So take your life or something.
Yes, whether some of the commentators said that this means that God is going to take Jesus in sleep. So his soul taken while he's asleep, or maybe his body and soul taken while he's in a state of sleep. Some others said no, God caused him to die for a few hours. Some said 3 hours. Some said.
And so now he's beginning to give, after he has rendered it in his own way, by using take, he's saying, some commentators say it means to take his soul in sleep. And while some commentators say no, what it means is to cause him to die. And he's going to explain that those who say to cause him to die say to die for some time, maybe for 3 hours, or maybe for, let him finish that.
Said 7 hours. Some said even 3 days, which almost parallels the gospel accounts.
Okay, did you hear that? So some say for 3 hours, some say for 7 hours. He said some even said God will cause him to die for 3 days, which parallels the gospel accounts. Did you hear that? Muslims in Nigeria, are you listening to this? I'm waiting for your own explanation. These are your sheikhs. These are your scholars. Shabir Ally is still alive, and he's a PhD. He's well educated. He understands these writings. He's okay. So,
as if Jesus had been dead for a few days, and then God somehow raised him to himself. Another passage in the same vein is in the 5th chapter of the Quran, where it says that Jesus will address God, saying, فَلَمَّا تَوَفَّيْتَنِي كُنْتَ أَنْتَ الرَّقِيبَ عَلَيْهِمْ. After you had taken me.
He's lying there again. So he's jumping to Surah 5 now. And the place doesn't say take, it is to kill, to cause to die. And he is not going to interpret it that way. He's not going to translate it that way. He is translating it in his own way, but let him continue nonetheless.
You remained as the watcher over my disciples. You, God, remained to watch over my disciples. So here is the idea that God took Jesus. But then what is meant by take? Again, the same sort of discussion follows, that it could be take in sleep or take in death. The verse, though, that you might be thinking of when you said that there is a verse is the one in Surah An-Nisa, the 4th chapter of the Quran.
So he's coming to the meat of the matter. So when his daughter said there is a verse, so now he's responding. The verse you might be referring to is in Surah 4, ayah 157. Let's see how he's going to explain that.
Where it says that they said we killed Jesus, the Messiah, the messenger of God. And then the Quran follows up by saying, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ, whereas they killed him not, nor did they crucify him, but so it was made to appear to them.
This is a common verse that many Muslims quote.
Yes, and based on this verse, Muslims will commonly say that Jesus was not crucified, and by that they would mean that Jesus was not even put on the cross. So,
based on this ayah, Dr. Shabir Ally says most Muslims who say Jesus was not crucified, that he was not even put on the cross. Nigerian Muslims, once again, pay attention because you are living in the dark. You are living in darkness. You don't know what you are doing. Shabir Ally, continue.
what are we to make of this whole gospel account that somebody was there on the cross and crucified under Roman authority, and that person was Jesus? Well, the Muslim commentators on the Quran generally say, with reference to this verse, that what actually happened was that Jesus was taken up alive into heaven before he was even arrested, and that's generally how the story is told. And someone else was made to look like Jesus.
Okay. Which is what we explained in episode 1. So they will say somebody else was made to appear like Jesus, and that person was put on the cross, and that Jesus was taken up alive. Okay. And Dr. Shabir Ally is going to say that is wrong. That is not true.
And this someone else was put on the cross.
Okay.
And so everyone was convinced that Jesus was on the cross, whereas in fact by this time Jesus was in heaven.
So who holds this point of view?
This is generally held by Muslims at large.
Okay. So his daughter asked him, so who holds this view? He said this is generally held by Muslims at large. Nigerian Muslims, I hope you're paying attention.
Because it is described like this in the Muslim commentaries on the Quran.
Which we read in Ibn Kathir's commentary. So he said, Muslims believe this because it is described like that in the Muslims' commentary on the Quran. No, it's not only described there, it's also written in your Quran that it was made to appear like that to them. So we want you to explain what does it mean when your Quran says it was made to appear like that to them. That's the question. What does it mean?
However, that commentary on this verse is a spin-off from an attempt to take the verse in its most literal sense possible. You see, when it's
okay, so he's saying it's a spin-off. Those who say so, they are taking the verse literally. They're taking the verse literally. Okay, how do you take the verse, so Dr. Shabir Ally?
Crucifixion, both in English and in Arabic, is slightly ambiguous in that it can be used in...
Can you see? This is the second time he's using the word ambiguous. There's nothing that is clear in Islam. Nothing. So it's ambiguous. There's an ambiguity. These are the people that are telling us that we're following conjecture. And yet, he's talking of ambiguity. He's talking about being ambiguous. I thought the Quran was clear. Mubin. Now it's no longer Mubin. It's no longer clear. Okay, let him continue.
In two senses. One sense is that a person is actually executed by the method of crucifixion, which means he's actually put to death. But crucifixion can also mean merely hanging a person on the cross. Obviously with the intention of executing him, but not necessarily following through with it to the end.
But in most cases, wouldn't that be the natural...
Do you see the game he's playing here? So crucifixion could also mean hanging somebody on the cross with the intention to execute him. So that action of hanging on the cross, it could also be crucifixion, but the person did not die on the cross. So where is he taking this to? Where is he taking this to?
Sort of progression that someone would die.
Yes,
okay.
that would normally be the situation. But let's say it's discussed in Islamic texts what might be done with a certain category of criminals, and then the discussion follows: what if the person is put on the cross and then taken down after a while? Well, if he's put on the cross and taken down after a while, well, then he was still in a sense crucified.
Can you see the game he's playing? Can you see the game he's playing here? So if somebody was put on the cross and then taken down, who took Jesus down after being put on the cross? Who took Jesus down? So that is where he's going, that he was put on the cross, but he was taken down. He never died on the cross. And so he recovered afterwards. These are Islamic scholars, because he understands the problem of saying Jesus was not crucified. So he had to create an ambiguous definition of crucifixion, that it could mean crucifixion, dying by crucifixion, and it could also mean being put on the cross without dying. And so he's taking the second definition that he was so what he is trying to say, what the Quran means is that he was not killed by crucifixion. He was not, but he believes that, well, he might have been put on the cross and then taken down, because he knows that what the Quran says cannot stand the test of history. He knows that history contradicts what the Quran says. And he, being an enlightened person, he is a doctor, he's a PhD. He knows, he has read a lot of materials, and he knows that this thing cannot stand. This thing doesn't line up with history. It doesn't. This thing does not line up with history. So he has to come up with an alternative explanation for what Surah 4, Ayah 157 means. So Muslims in Nigeria, what I'm simply asking you is, you explain to us, what does Surah 4, Ayah 157 mean? Dr. Shabir Ally also knows that claiming that somebody died in the place of Jesus, just like the traditional Muslims will explain, is also problematic, because another passage of your Quran says that somebody, a bearer of burden, cannot bear the burden of another person. After all, that is what you accuse the Christians of doing. You say that we claim that Jesus has carried our sins, and you are trying to refute that. But the young man that you claim died in the position of your Isa, what did the young man do? Isn't that bearing the burden of Isa? Isn't that dying in the position of Isa? We say Isa died, Jesus died in our position. You said no, but you are claiming that somebody died in his own position. So you are basically inverting. You are holding on to the opposite of what we're saying. In our own case, Jesus died for our sins. But in your own case, you are saying another man died for the sin of Jesus. That's what you are saying. And Dr. Shabir Ally understands that that is so problematic.
But in another sense, he wasn't crucified. So when the Quran is denying the crucifixion of Jesus, is it denying that Jesus was ever put on the cross at all? Or is it denying that Jesus was killed by this method? And to me, the most natural reading of the Quran, in the light of what we know from the Gospels, is that the Quran is denying that Jesus actually died on the cross. Now, if one were to study the Gospels carefully, one will see that there are points at which it is presumed that Jesus died. But
can you believe what this man, this is a doctor, can you believe what he's doing? Because he's standing on shaky grounds. He's holding on to the Quran, but the Quran is letting him down. The Quran is letting him down. All right? And he has to come up with all kinds of explanations. And he knows that in the light of the gospel, you heard him say that, in the light of the gospel accounts, which are historically attested to be true, he knows that the Quran's ayah, Surah 4, ayah 157, cannot be historical. He understands that. And so he has to come up with alternative explanations. Muslims in Nigeria, once again, what are your own explanations?
But no one had actually checked to see whether he died in the way in which one...
No, you are lying. So he said, in a way, there was a way that Jesus could have been taken down from the cross without dying, because nobody actually checked that he died. No, they checked that he died. They actually checked that he died. All right? I don't want these things to be too long, but they checked. Let me see if I can get that particular verse that it was checked. and certified that Jesus Christ had died on the cross. So we're going to pause Dr. Shabir Ally here, and I'll jump to Mark. I want him to repeat that thing before I go to Mark chapter 15. So let him repeat it. He's trying to prove that maybe they were not certain that Jesus had died or not. So a mistake could have been made that he was taken down from the cross alive. That's what he's insinuating here. Let him repeat that.
What we know from the Gospels is that the Quran is denying that Jesus actually died on the cross. Now, if one were to study the Gospels carefully, one will see that there are points at which it is presumed that Jesus died, but no one had actually checked to see whether he died in the way in which one might expect a medical examiner to check. For example,
okay, so did you hear that very clearly? So he said there are points in the gospel in which Jesus was presumed to die, but there was no way that one might check that he had actually died, in things like that. So I'm going to read from Mark. These are people that because there's just no way you will hold on to the Quran and you will not be a liar. Okay, so this is Mark chapter 15 in verse 43. Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Verse 44. Here you have it. Pilate was surprised to hear that he was already dead. Summoning the centurion, he asked him if Jesus had already died. Have you seen that? And Dr. Shabir Ally is insinuating that the Romans perhaps did not check that Jesus had died, and so they brought him down from the... Who believes this nonsense? Who holds on to this nonsense? Verse 45. This is 45. When he learned from the centurion that it was so, he gave the body to Joseph. Did you hear that? So in verse 43, Joseph of Arimathea went to Pilate and demanded the body of Jesus for burial. Pilate was wondering if he had already died, so he called the centurion and asked. He inquired, was he dead? And they certified that he was already dead. And in verse 45, the Bible clearly says, when Pilate had learned the truth of his death, that was when he released the body of Jesus. And Dr. Shabir Ally, a doctor, do you think he had never read this place? No, he had. He must have read this place several times, but he has to lie in order to defend the Quran. He has to lie.
Listening for a heartbeat or checking the pulse of the person, even given the standards at the time. You see, Jesus was placed on a cross, which is, by definition, above, would place the victim above ground. So that in depictions of this in the Passion of the Christ, for example, you have Mary approaching Jesus, and Jesus is all the way up there, so that Mary's mouth is at the level with Jesus's toes. So what that means is that if you have a victim on the cross and he's several feet above ground, then if he appears to breathe his last, you cannot tell the difference between whether he is in a state of death or in a state of coma, for example.
So that is the whole argument of Dr. Shabir Ally, that Jesus was taken down from the cross alive. There's just no point to keep on listening to the rest. You've heard it. You've heard it. And this is a very ridiculous thing. So we're still asking, what happened to Jesus? According to Surah 4, Ayah 157, and who was put on the cross? Since your Quran says it was made to appear like that to them. Here is one of the modern day scholars, and he has thrown under the bus people like Ibn Kathir and all the other people that hold on to the traditional view, to the orthodox in the sense of Islam. So drop your comments in the comment section down below. I don't want this thing to be maybe we should listen to a few more seconds and see where he's going with this.
Example. So when the reporters said that Jesus died, they just simply mean that, for all we can tell, he's expired, and that's the end of him. And of course, if you take that crucified victim down from the cross and you put him in a grave and cover him with 6 feet of earth, then he will die.
So based on this understanding, then what do you think happened to Jesus then?
Well,
If we follow your line of logic.
So his daughter is growing impatient and said, okay, let's follow your own line of logic. What do you think happened? Enough of this blabbing. Tell us what you think happened. So listen.
One cannot say for absolutely sure what happened to Jesus, because this is a historical question. But as a theological matter,
do you see that? One cannot say what happened to Jesus. For sure, you can't say. So who is following conjecture? This is, look at him, look at his face. So you see that he's not a baby in Islam. And yet he's following conjecture. He is not sure. And still, your Quran is saying that Christians are not sure. So, okay, you tell us. They cannot tell us.
trying to interpret the Quran, I would say that when the Quran says that they did not crucify Jesus, it simply means that they did not succeed in their plan of killing Jesus by this method of execution. They thought they had finished the job, but in fact they had not. And so when the Gospel of Luke reports that the scholars who wanted to see Jesus dead, they left to observe the Sabbath towards the Friday evening when Jesus was crucified. And then Matthew's Gospel says that on the Saturday, they came to Pilate's court asking Pilate to seal up the tomb in which Jesus' body was placed because they were afraid that his disciples will come and steal.
Does it take so long like this? Does it take so long to explain? He has to go into stories and stories and stories and stories. But your daughter is asking you, Dr. Shabir Ally, what do you think happened? What do you think actually happened? There's conjecture, but nothing of substance.
Steal his body and then tell everyone that he was resurrected from the dead. And so it is said now that Pilate did give the order to have the tomb sealed. But when the soldiers went to seal the tomb, it is not mentioned that they actually looked inside to see if the body was still there.
Enough. There is nothing else. There is nothing else. It is all conjecture. So when the soldiers went, it was not mentioned that, you mean the Roman soldiers. The Roman soldiers. Who takes you seriously? So let me know what you think in the comment section down below. We're going through the Muslim understanding of Surah 4, Ayah 157, that claims that Jesus was not crucified. And so far, nothing. There is no explanation. No reasonable explanation. Did you see? This is a doctor. This is an elderly person. And all that he's doing is blah, 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 blah. And maybe he did not die. Maybe he did not die. He was taken down when Pilate said, go and certify. And they brought the report that he was already dead. And Dr. Shabir Ally was saying, he's saying here, that maybe they didn't know that he had. Imagine. So he didn't die. Jesus didn't die on the cross. And the soldiers that went to certify him that he was dead just thought that he had died. And so when they brought him down also, they still did not know that he had died. They were not sure. They thought he had died, but in fact he had not died. So it was when they put him in the tomb, that was when he recovered. That's exactly what Dr. Shabir Ally is saying. Who believes this thing? Muslims. Muslims in Nigeria. It's your turn. Tell us Surah 4, Ayah 157. Explain it. So far you have seen this explanation. Tell us whether it meets your own idea of what Surah 4, Ayah 157 is saying. So drop your comment in the comment section down below. Thank you and God bless you. I'll meet you in the next video.